So you're probably all well aware of the old school classic saying, all good things must come to an end, and it sounds like we are fastly approaching the end of $60 full price new game releases, as first we saw Sony launch this PlayStation 5 generation with first party titles selling at $70. Microsoft first hinting at the fact that they may have to look into price increases on first party games in the future, and are now confirming that for first party Xbox Series X and S games going forward. And in today's video, we have to discuss the implications of this at a industry-wide level, look at some previous comments on what Nintendo has referenced in this so far, and break down what this really means for the future of game prices, including Nintendo Switch titles going forward. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. As I mentioned, guys, today we are discussing the gaming industry as a whole and how these brand new changes to Sony and Microsoft's pricing this current console generation will most likely ultimately trickle down to hit Nintendo Switch games, or maybe the Switch 2 or true next gen successor, but you can definitely realize that we are on a trajectory here for major first party releases to launch right at that $70 price point. As to first get on the same page with what's been announced on Microsoft's end and what they have now committed to going to in terms of pricing structure in 2023, let's quickly hop over to VGC and read through their detailed typed up article together. Microsoft's Xbox Series X and S games will increase in price to $70 starting in 2023. This will include games like Forza Motorsport, Redfall, and Starfield. Starting next year, the likes of Forza Motorsport, Redfall, and Starfield will cost $69.99 at launch in the US. In a statement to IGN, Microsoft said regional pricing may differ and didn't offer specifics for other countries. This price reflects the content scale and technical complexity of these titles, a Microsoft spokesperson said. As with all of our games developed by our teams at Xbox, they will also be available with Game Pass the same day they launch. In August 2020, Take-Two's NBA 2K21 became the first current-gen game to be priced at $70. Other companies followed suit, including Activision, Sony, EA, and Square Enix, with the Final Fantasy publisher even bringing the increased price point to some of its PC games. More recently, in September, Assassin's Creed publisher Ubisoft said $70 would also be norm for its major releases going forward. While Microsoft has yet to release a $70 game, its first-party release lineup has been relatively bare since Xbox Series X and S and PS5 launched in November of 2020. Now, the first thing to kind of unpack and look at with a little bit of a nuanced perspective here is the simple fact that Microsoft kind of has a dual motive for doing this. Yes, not only are the development costs for modern day AAA games through the roof, and we have been paying realistically the same price for multiple generations at this point, they also have a dual motive to make their first party releases $70 because one, it's going to be more revenue for the developers, but two, it makes a whole heck of a lot more sense to sign up for Game Pass if you have that stark $70 price point staring you in the face for their first party games, versus if you pay them $15 for a month, you have a full month to experience that full party release, and you can have multiple months before you ever even come close to that $70 retail price point. And since Microsoft has made a clear focus to shift and be essentially the leader in what is a gaming subscription service, aiming to really become a Netflix of gaming, if you will, I think that makes a lot of sense for their particular strategy. Sony, on the other hand, is in a more interesting scenario because they can't really afford to fully go into a Game Pass style model. They've even said this themselves, from heads like Jim Ryan, who I think is doing a lot wrong this generation of PlayStation consoles, but he's transparently said that it is not profitable enough to throw their first party AAA games into a subscription service, and Microsoft is probably not making all the profit in the world, but they are playing the long game with this, trying to get Game Pass on as many devices as possible. And Nintendo finds themselves in really an entirely different scenario than either company, because yes, Nintendo does have absolutely massive development budgets, but they also have never been associated with the highest level of graphical fidelity, voiceover acting even missing in many of their mainline games still, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet being a great example of that, and look at how that game is selling. And if anybody can afford to hold out longer on this price increase, it is Nintendo. In addition to that, the other thing to look at is history. Through the Wii and the Wii U era, Nintendo was selling their games at $50 full retail, while the PS3, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PS4 were all up to that $60 price point, and we did not see Nintendo jump to that and fully commit until the Switch generation that we find ourselves in now. And to be clear, that doesn't mean I don't think we'll ever see the price increase go to $70 on Switch games or the Switch 2. I actually think that we will, but I do think that they can make a case for holding out longer than the competition. But the reality is, if you look around, everything is getting more expensive. Surprisingly enough, in this gaming generation, we are seeing things like console price increases. And when have you ever talked about that in generations past? Unless you're talking about scalper prices, you were always able to expect a more marked down version of the console, maybe a slim version, but also just a straight up price cut on the launch model of the console to hit. Nintendo has not done that, and meanwhile, we've seen things like price increases from Sony this console generation in every major market of the world other than the US, and they're really just leaning on stocking the bundle PS5 versions that come with a game included to justify the $550 price point as opposed to the $500. Even have the Meta Quest headset going up $100 in price while it's being sold. Of course, that's VR tech, but it's still in the same conversation. Things are going up, not down now with how inflation is. And the $70 price point for first-party Nintendo titles is most likely inevitable. The question will remain to be when. When does this happen? Do I think that this will happen in the current Switch generation? I think it's highly unlikely. We may see one-off titles not developed from Nintendo themselves sold at that $60 price point. We've already seen some of them, like the Skyrim most recent re-release edition, whatever that was, because that game's been re-released like 15 to 20 times at this point. Anyway, that was $70 on the Switch. We've seen those one-off titles already happen, but in terms of Nintendo selling you Zelda Tears of the Kingdom at $70, well, maybe that happens if it launches brand new generational hardware, but the only way I see Nintendo making that jump most likely, in my opinion, is with new console hardware. Now, if they really just want to do a Switch revision and make it 4K capable, and the 4K logo is on every Switch game you buy, that might be the justification to spend the $10 extra for that version of the game, and they sell it at $70. But I think more likely, if you look at Nintendo's history, they can hold out longer at a $60 price point and most likely give us that $70 punch when the true Nintendo Switch 2 or just the next crazy creative idea that Nintendo has for a home console actually comes to market. However, with how fast everything changes now, and even if you want to briefly talk about some of Nintendo's comments from their most recent investor meeting, when asked about price increases around the Switch hardware, they were not asked about games specifically, I don't believe, but the general sentiment from Mr. Furukawa was, we are monitoring the situation with how the yen is performing versus the dollar. We will take action if necessary, but there are no plans for that at this time. But then again, it's not like you can take to the bank Nintendo saying they have no plans to do something as fact statement, as I think you can reference multiple times where they've turned around and done something right after they said they have no plans to do it. So I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video on your personal thoughts and opinions on this matter. Do you think we're getting the $70 price point coming to Nintendo Switch games anytime soon? How do you feel about this price increase as a whole? Do you think it's justified? Do you think it's coming from a place of more of a cash grab from these companies? Or do you think it really is time to actually talk about raising prices on games because of the development resources and revenue that's required to run these companies, and just simply due to the fact that we've had the $60 price point be around for so long? And bonus question, how do you personally think Nintendo gets on board with the 70, or do you think they actually dodge this game price increase as a whole? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.